Snow was falling over Teterboro Airport on Christmas Eve, covering the runway in a sheet of white. Inside a $50 million Bombardier Global 7500, a veteran captain made the biggest mistake of his life. He saw a black woman in a hoodie sitting in the master suite, and he didn't see a passenger. He saw a problem. He ordered her to move to the back, treating her like the help, to make room for a loud-mouthed VIP. He thought he was protecting the prestige of the flight. He had no idea that the woman he was humiliating didn't just book the seat she had just bought the entire airline. This is the story of Captain Richard Sterling's last flight, and the brutal, beautiful karma that happens when you judge a book by its cover. The air inside the signature flight support terminal at Teterboro Airport TEB smelled of expensive coffee floor wax and the specific high-octane anxiety that comes with private aviation on Christmas Eve. Outside, a nor'easter was hammering the New Jersey coast, threatening to ground every bird in the sky. Inside the 1% were pacing in cashmere coats, barking into cell phones, demanding to know why their Gulfstreams and Dassault Falcons weren't already wheels up. Dr. Eleanor Vance sat quietly in a corner of the lounge, far away from the complimentary champagne bar. To the casual observer, and specifically to the staff manning the marble front desk, Elena looked like a non-entity. She was wearing a pair of vintage, slightly worn grey sweatpants, a thick, oversized maroon hoodie from her alma mater MIT, and sneakers that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she was reading a paperback novel, her eyes hidden behind thick-rimmed reading glasses. She didn't look like a billionaire. She didn't look like the woman who had just revolutionized biosynthetic organ printing, a patent that had seen her company Vance Biometrics acquired for $11 billion 3 weeks ago. She looked like an assistant, or maybe a nanny waiting for the family she worked for to arrive. "Excuse me," a young woman at the concierge desk called out, her voice thin and strained. "Ma'am, you can't leave your bag in the walkway." Elena looked up, blinking. Her duffel bag, an unassuming canvas thing, was tucked under her legs, not in the walkway at all. But she smiled. "My apologies. I'll pull it closer." The concierge didn't smile back. She was too busy engaging with a tall, frantic man in a camel hair coat who was screaming about his ski trip to Aspen. Elena checked her watch. 14 diesel hours. Her flight, a charter aboard a Bombardier Global 7500, was scheduled for 14:45. But this wasn't just a charter. This was AeroVantage, the private boutique airline she had quietly purchased a controlling interest in just 48 hours ago. The ink on the digital contracts was barely dry. Nobody knew. Not the press, not the ground crew, and certainly not the flight crew she was about to meet. She had booked this flight under her maiden name, Elena Smith, to conduct a ghost audit. She wanted to see how her new company treated people when they thought no one important was watching. "Smith party," a ground handler shouted, looking at a clipboard. He didn't look at Elena. He looked past her, scanning for someone wearing a suit. "That's me," Elena said, standing up and shouldering her bag. The handler looked her up and down, his lip curling slightly. "Just you." The manifest said VIP priority. "Just me," Elena said calmly. "Right. Follow me. We got a window between snow squalls. Captain wants to push back yesterday." They walked out onto the tarmac. The wind was biting, whipping snow into their faces. Looming ahead was the aircraft, the Global 7500 tail number 750 AV. It was a magnificent machine capable of flying from New York to Hong Kong without stopping. Its engines whined softly, already spooled up for heat. Elena loved aviation. She was a rated pilot herself, though she rarely flew these days. She knew the specs of this plane better than she knew her own house. She knew that the Rolls-Royce Pearl 15 engines generated 125 pounds of thrust. She knew the list price was $73 million. She walked up the air stairs, the cold metal vibrating under her feet. At the top of the stairs stood the flight attendant. Her name tag read Sarah. She looked exhausted. Her smile was plastered on, terrified of cracking. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Smith," Sarah said, glancing at the manifest, and then at Elena's hoodie. There was a flicker of confusion, but Sarah maintained her professionalism. "Let me take your coat. Would you like a hot towel?" "I'll keep the hoodie, thanks. It's chilly," Elena said warmly. "A water would be lovely." "Of course." Elena turned left, entering the main cabin. The interior was stunning cream leather walnut veneer gold accents. It was configured for 14 passengers, but the jewel of the plane was the master suite. At the front, a singular massive seat that converted into a bed with its own entertainment system and heavy privacy curtains. Eleanor walked straight to it, sat down, and buckled the belt. She pulled out her book, ready to relax for the flight to London. That was when the cockpit door opened. Captain Richard Sterling stepped out. He was a man who looked like he had been cast by Hollywood to play a pilot from the 1960s. Silver hair perfectly coiffed, jawline like a granite block. 4 gold stripes on his epaulets that gleamed under the cabin lights. He was 55, carried himself like a god, and had a reputation at Aerovantage for being old school. In Sterling's world, old school meant the pilot was the king, the passengers were lucky to be there, and order was maintained by visual hierarchy. He scanned the cabin. His eyes landed on the empty seats in the back. Then they tracked forward and landed on Elena in the master suite. His brow furrowed. He walked over his heavy footsteps, muffled by the thick carpet. He stood over her, looming. "Excuse me," Sterling said. His voice wasn't a question, it was a correction. Elena lowered her book. "Yes, Captain. You're in the wrong seat." Elena checked her boarding pass, though she didn't need to. "I don't think so. I booked the aircraft. It's an open cabin." Sterling let out a short, sharp breath, almost a laugh. He looked at her hoodie, her messy hair, her skin. He made a rapid calculation based on 30 years of biases. Staff, lottery winner, mistake. "Listen," Sterling said, dropping his voice to a patronizing register. "We have a last-minute addition to the manifest. A Priority 1 client, Mr. Julian Thorne. He's a platinum member with Aerovantage. He always takes the master suite." Elena remained perfectly still. "I paid for the charter, Captain. The entire plane. If Mr. Thorne is joining, he is a guest on my flight. I wasn't informed of any shared charter." Sterling's face reddened. He hated being contradicted, especially by women, and specifically by women who looked like they should be cleaning the plane, not buying it. "This is a deadhead leg for you, effectively," Sterling lied smoothly. "We needed to move the metal to London anyway. Mr. Thorne's agency brokered a deal. But that's technical. The point is, Mr. Thorne is a man of significant status. He needs the workspace. You," he gestured vaguely at her paperback novel, "seem to be on leisure. You will be more comfortable in the aft cabin. The divan is very soft." "I am comfortable here," Eleanor said, her voice dropping a specific degree in temperature. "And I did not agree to share this jet." "Ms. Smith," Sterling snapped, his patience evaporating. "I am the captain. My word on this aircraft is law. We are currently in a weather hold. If you do not move to seat 5A, I will have you deplaned for failure to comply with crew instructions. Do you understand? It was the ultimate trump card. In the post-9/11 world, a pilot could remove anyone for interfering with flight crew duties. Sterling was weaponizing safety protocols to enforce his bigotry. Elena looked at him. She saw the sneer he couldn't quite hide. She saw the arrogance, and she realized that firing him later wouldn't be enough. She needed to see how deep the rot went. "Fine," Elena said softly. "I'll move." She unbuckled her belt. Sterling smirked a victorious glint in his eyes. "Good girl," he said, turning his back on her before she could even stand up. "Sarah, get the champagne on ice. Mr. Thorne is 5 minutes out." Elena picked up her bag. She walked past the master suite, past the club seating, and settled into seat 5A, a smaller seat near the rear lavatory. She pulled her hoodie tight. The game was on. 10 minutes later, the cabin door opened again, admitting a gust of freezing wind and a man who sucked all the oxygen out of the room. Julian Thorne was a caricature of Wall Street excess. He was in his late 30s, wearing a suit that cost more than a Honda Civic, with a Bluetooth earpiece permanently fused to his ear. He was shouting into the air as he boarded. "No, I told you dump the stock. I don't care if it's Christmas. If the market is open, you're selling." He tapped the earpiece off and looked around the cabin with a sniff. "Smells like de-icing fluid in here. God, I hate winter." Captain Sterling emerged from the cockpit, immediately his demeanor transforming from tyrant to servant. He practically bowed. "Mr. Thorne, exquisite to see you again. Welcome aboard the Global." "Sterling, you old dog," Thorne said, tossing his cashmere coat onto the floor for Sarah to pick up. "Get us in the air. I have a dinner reservation at the Shard at 9 p.m. Don't make me late." "We have a slot in 10 minutes. We'll make up time in the air. I've secured the master suite for you, of course," Sterling said, gesturing grandly to the seat Elena had just vacated. Thorne dropped into the seat, spreading his legs wide. "Excellent. I need to work." Suddenly, Thorne noticed Elena in the back of the plane. He squinted. "Who's that?" Sterling leaned in, whispering loud enough for Elena to hear. "Just a deadhead passenger. Discount charter. She won't disturb you. If she does, let me know." "She better not," Thorne grunted. "I hate crying babies, and I hate chatterboxes." "She knows her place," Sterling assured him. Elena sat in seat 5A, her hands folded in her lap. She wasn't reading her book anymore. She was memorizing every word, every interaction. She watched Sarah, the flight attendant, scrambling to hang up Thorne's coat while he snapped his fingers at her for a drink. "Vodka tonic. Goose. 3 limes. Don't drown it," Thorne barked. Sarah looked nervous. She glanced back at Elena. "Can I get you anything, Miss Smith?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Sarah seemed to sense the injustice, even if she was powerless to stop it. "I'm fine, Sarah. Thank you," Elena said. "Don't worry about her," Thorne shouted from the front. "Service priority is here, sweetheart." Sterling retreated to the cockpit, shutting the heavy door. The engines whined louder as the plane began to taxi. As the jet taxied toward the runway, Elena pulled out her phone. She had a signal for a few more minutes. She opened a secure messaging app and typed a message to AeroVantage's Chief of Operations, a man named David Chen. Elena, who is piloting N750 AV to London. Chen Captain Richard Sterling, Senior Pilot. Why is something wrong? Ms. Vance, Elena. He just moved me out of my seat to accommodate a Julian Thorne. He claims Thorne is a priority client. There was a long pause. 3 dots danced on the screen. Chen Ms. Vance. Julian Thorne is a mid-tier client. He pays standard rates. He's currently on a status probation for abusing staff last month. And Captain Sterling has no authority to move you. You own the plane. Elena Sterling doesn't know who I am. He thinks I'm a discount passenger named Smith. Do not contact the aircraft. I want to see how this plays out. Chen understood. But be advised, Sterling is up for contract renewal in January. We were planning to make him chief pilot. Elena. Not anymore. The plane turned onto the active runway. The thrust kicked in, pressing Elena into the back of her small seat. The Global 7500 rocketed into the grey sky, punching through the snowstorm. Once they leveled off at 41,000 feet, the seatbelt sign pinged off. The cabin was quiet, save for the hum of the air conditioning and the clinking of Julian Thorne's glass. Elena unbuckled. She needed to use the restroom, but also she wanted to test the waters. She stood up and walked toward the front galley, which required her to pass Thorne's seat. As she passed, the plane hit a pocket of clear air turbulence, XAT. It was a sharp jolt. Elena stumbled slightly, her hand brushing the edge of Thorne's armrest to steady herself. Thorne reacted as if he'd been scalded. He jumped, spilling a drop of his vodka on his trousers. "Watch it!" he screamed. "It was turbulence," Elena said calmly. "Apologies. Look what you did. This is Italian wool." Thorne was standing now, his face purple. Sterling, get you to out here." The cockpit door flew open instantly. Captain Sterling stepped out, looking furious. "What is going on? This woman!" Thorne spat, pointing a shaking finger at Elena. "She's stumbling around drunk. She spilled my drink. She's a security threat, Richard. I don't feel safe." Sterling turned his gaze on Elena. It was cold, predatory. He didn't ask her version. He didn't ask Sarah, who was witnessing the whole thing with wide eyes. "I told you to stay in your seat," Sterling growled, stepping into Elena's personal space. "I was going to the restroom, Captain. The plane jolted. I haven't had a drop of alcohol." "I don't care," Sterling said. "You are disrupting a VIP passenger. You are creating a hostile environment." "He spilled his own drink," Elena said, her voice hardening. "And you are creating a hostile environment by yelling at a passenger." Sterling's eyes widened. He wasn't used to back-talk. He grabbed Elena's upper arm, a hard, physical violation of every protocol in the book. "Do not speak to me like that. You are lucky to be on this plane. One more word, one more incident, and I will divert this flight to Gander, Newfoundland. I will have the RCMP waiting to drag you off for interfering with a flight crew. Do you want to spend Christmas in a Canadian jail cell?" Elena looked at his hand on her arm. Then she looked up into his eyes. "Take your hand off me," she whispered. It wasn't a plea. It was an order delivered with the absolute authority of someone who commanded thousands of employees. Sterling flinched. For a second he saw something in her eyes, a flash of steel that didn't match the hoodie. He let go, stepping back. "Sit down," he hissed, "and don't move until we hit the chocks in London." Elena smoothed her sleeve. She looked at Thorne, who was smirking, wiping his pants with a napkin. She looked at Sterling. "Okay," she said. "I'll sit." She turned and walked back to seat 5A. She sat down, closed her eyes, and waited. They had 6 hours left in the air. 6 hours for Sterling to dig his grave a little deeper. And 6 hours for Eleanor to plan exactly how she was going to bury him in it. The turbulence worsened, shaking the plane violently. But Elena Vance didn't feel the bumps. She was too busy calculating the net worth of Julian Thorne and wondering if AeroVantage's insurance covered the absolute destruction of a captain's career. 2 hours into the flight over the dark, churning Atlantic, the cabin lights were dimmed to a warm, ambient amber. The smell of heated truffle oil and filet mignon wafted from the galley. Elena's stomach rumbled. She hadn't eaten since breakfast. Her VIP status, which she had paid $85,000 for before buying the airline, included the chef's table menu. But as she sat in the cramped aft seat, she watched Sarah nervously carry a silver platter toward the front. "Mr. Thorne." Sarah's voice trembled slightly. "Your dinner. The filet mignon with truffle mash and asparagus." "Finally," Thorne grunted, not looking up from his laptop. "What about the wine I asked for the 09 Bordeaux?" "I have it breathing right here, sir." Elena watched as Sarah poured the wine. Then the flight attendant walked back toward Elena, her hands empty. Sarah's face was pained. She crouched down next to seat 5A, whispering, "Miss Smith, I am so sorry." "What's wrong, Sarah?" Elena asked gently. "Captain Sterling. He ordered me to serve your meal to Mr. Thorne." Elena raised an eyebrow. "My meal? Doesn't the plane carry a surplus?" "Usually, yes, but with the Storm catering shorted us one premier meal. We have the crew meals and, well, Mr. Thorne wanted seconds. He said he was famished after the market closed." Sarah looked like she wanted to cry. "The captain said since you're a deadhead passenger, you don't get the premier catering. I have a cold turkey sandwich from the crew rations. It's not much." Eleanor felt a flare of anger, not for the food she had grown up on, much less than turkey sandwiches, but for the principle. The petty, grinding humiliation of it. "That's fine, Sarah," Elena said, taking the plastic-wrapped sandwich. "Thank you for telling me. It's not your fault." "He's awful," Sarah whispered, checking over her shoulder to ensure the cockpit door was closed. "I've flown with Sterling for 2 years. He's always been strict, but today, he's trying to impress that guy. He thinks Thorne can get him a job flying Gulfstreams for a hedge fund. He's selling his soul for a reference." "Is that so?" Elena murmured, unwrapping the sandwich. "Interesting. Just keep your head down," Sarah advised. "We land in 4 hours. I'll sneak you some chocolates later." Sarah hurried back to the galley as the cockpit door opened. Captain Sterling emerged again. The autopilot was flying the plane, but a pilot should be monitoring the systems, especially in winter weather over the ocean. Instead, Sterling was schmoozing. He leaned against the bulkhead near Thorne's seat, a tumbler of sparkling water in his hand, laughing loudly at something Thorne said. "That's rich, Mr. Thorne, rich," Sterling guffawed. "And then you fired him." "Terminated him on the spot," Thorne shouted, spraying crumbs of Elena's filet mignon. "Told him, if you can't handle the pressure, go drive a bus." "Right, Captain." "Absolutely. Leadership requires a heavy hand," Sterling agreed, casting a derogatory glance toward the back of the plane where Elena sat. Thorne frowned, tapping his iPad. "Hey, Sterling, the Wi-Fi is dragging. I'm trying to stream the Asian markets opening. It's buffering." Sterling straightened up. "Is it? Let me check the panel." He walked to the galley touchscreen that controlled the cabin environment. He tapped a few menus. "Bandwidth is tight because of the storm interference," Sterling lied. "But let me prioritize the signal." Elena, watching from the back, saw exactly what he did. He didn't boost the signal. He went into the connected node menu, found the device labeled Elena's iPhone, and hit block. In seat 5A, Elena's phone went dark. Her connection to the outside world and to her operations team was severed. Sterling walked back to Thorn. I just cut the dead weight from the network, disconnected the non-essential devices in the rear. You should have full speed now. Thorn laughed. You cut her off nice. I like your style, Sterling. Ruthless. Priority clients get priority bandwidth, Sterling said with a smug grin. Enjoy the speed. Elena stared at her phone. The no connection symbol blinked at her. She set the turkey sandwich down. This was a mistake. A tactical error on Sterling's part. He assumed she was helpless without the plane's Wi-Fi. He didn't know that Elena Vance carried a prototype device in her bag, a satellite uplink node developed by her own tech subsidiary for field researchers in the Amazon. It didn't rely on the plane's rotor. It connected directly to the low Earth orbit constellation her company helped fund. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small black puck no larger than a cosmetic compact. She pressed the power button. A soft blue light pulsed. Connection established. Secure link active. Elena picked up her phone. She didn't text David Chen this time. She texted the AeroVantage Board of Directors emergency line. Elena, initiate Protocol 7. Airport London, Stansted STN. Flight N750AV. ETA 3 hours. Board response Protocol 7 is for hostile takeover or criminal negligence. Please confirm identity. Elena placed her thumb on the screen for a biometric scan. Elena identity confirmed. Elena Vance, chairwoman. I want the full reception. Legal HR and airport security. And get me the flight data recorder logs for the last 3 hours remote downloaded immediately. Board response understood. Ms. Vance, the team is rolling. We will meet the aircraft. Eleanor put the phone away and took a bite of the dry turkey sandwich. It tasted like justice. The descent into London was a nightmare. Winter had tightened its grip on the UK. Storm Kiara was battering the coast with 60 mph winds. The Global 7500 was a heavy, stable jet, but even it was being tossed around like a leaf in a gutter. In the master suite, Julian Thorn. Thorn was no longer laughing. The turbulence had turned his face a pale shade of green. He had consumed 3 vodka tonics and half a bottle of Bordeaux, and the mixture was not sitting well with the sudden drops in altitude. Sterling, Thorn yelled, clutching the armrests. Do something, stop this bouncing. The cockpit door was closed now. Sterling was finally doing his job, wrestling the aircraft through the gale. In the back, Elena was calm. She knew the airframe limits. She knew they were safe, structurally. But she also knew that Sterling was flying a slam-dunk approach, coming in fast and steep to minimize the time in the rough air, likely to appease Thorn's desire to be on the ground quickly. It was a lazy, aggressive way to fly. Suddenly, the intercom crackled. Cabin crew, prepare for landing, Sterling's voice barked. We have a crosswind. It's going to be firm. Sarah was strapped into her jump seat near the galley, looking pale. She made eye contact with Elena and gave a weak thumbs up. Then Thorn retched. It wasn't a subtle sound. He lurched forward, heaving, but missed the sickness bag. Vomit splattered onto the pristine cream leather of the master suite and the expensive wool carpet. Sarah, Thorn screamed, wiping his mouth with his sleeve. Clean this up. It stinks. I can't sit in this. The seatbelt sign was on. The plane was descending through 10,000 feet, bumping violently. Sarah unbuckled. Sir, I can't get up right now. It's not safe. I don't care about safety. It smells like bile. Thorn unbuckled his own belt and stood up, swaying dangerously as the plane banked left. If you won't do it, I'll get the help to do it. He turned and glared at Eleanor in the back. Hey, you hoodie, Thorn shouted, stumbling down the aisle, holding onto the overhead bins for balance. "Get up here. Clean this mess up. You're not doing anything anyway." Elena looked at him. The man was drunk, irrational, and endangering everyone by standing up during a volatile approach. "Sit down, Mr. Thorne." Elena said, her voice projecting clearly over the engine roar. "The plane is maneuvering. You are going to get hurt." "Don't tell me what to do. I'm worth $50 million. Thorne lunged toward her, grabbing the headrest of seat 5A. "I said clean it up," Sarah screamed. "Mr. Thorne, stop!" The cockpit door burst open. Captain Sterling, hearing the commotion, had put the co-pilot in control to intervene. This was the height of unprofessionalism during a critical flight phase. "What is happening?" Sterling roared. "She refused to help me." Thorne lied, pointing a shaking finger at Elena. "I'm sick and she's mocking me." Sterling looked at the vomit on the floor, then at Elena. The stress of the approach, the bad weather, and his desire to please the VIP caused him to snap. "You—" Sterling pointed at Elena. "You are the most disruptive passenger I have ever carried. You have agitated a VIP, you have refused crew instructions, and now you are causing a riot during approach." "He is standing up during a code yellow turbulence event," Elena said calmly. "Check your instruments, Captain. Your co-pilot is fighting a 30-knot shear. Get back in the cockpit." "I am radioing the tower." Sterling spat his face inches from hers. "I'm declaring a security incident. When we land, you aren't walking off this plane. The police are going to drag you off. I'm pressing charges for interfering with a flight crew. You're done." He turned to Thorne. "Sit in the jump seat, Mr. Thorne. It's clean. We're landing." Sterling slammed the cockpit door shut. Elena sat back. She checked her watch. They would be on the ground in 15 minutes. She felt a strange sense of calm. Sterling had just radioed the police. He had done the work for her. He had ensured that authorities would be waiting at the bottom of the stairs. He thought they were there for her. The plane dropped the landing gear with a heavy thud. The flaps whined as they extended. Elena looked out the window. The lights of London Stansted blurred through the driving snow. She saw the flashing blue lights of emergency vehicles gathering near the private terminal ramp. Sterling came over the PA, his voice smug. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are on final approach. Please remain seated. We will be met by authorities upon landing due to a security issue in the cabin. We apologize to our premium passengers for the inconvenience caused by others." The wheels slammed onto the wet runway. The plane skidded slightly, correcting violently as the thrust reversers roared. It was a sloppy, angry landing. As the plane slowed to a taxi, Sarah looked back at Elena, tears in her eyes. She mouthed, "I'm sorry." Elena just smiled. She reached into her bag and put on a touch of lipstick. She straightened her hoodie. The plane taxied toward the signature flight support terminal, but it didn't stop at the usual spot. It was directed to a remote stand illuminated by floodlights. Surrounding the stand were 3 police cars, a black Mercedes van, and a sleek Jaguar sedan. Sterling taxied to a halt and set the parking brake. He emerged from the cockpit, buttoning his blazer, looking like the hero of his own movie. "Stay there," he ordered Elena. "Don't move a muscle." He opened the main cabin door. The stairs lowered automatically. Cold wind and snow swirled into the cabin. Sterling walked down the stairs first, ready to greet the police and hand over his prisoner. Thorne followed him, stumbling, looking eager to see the hoodie woman arrested. Elena stood up. She picked up her bag. She walked past the vomit-stained master suite. She nodded to Sarah. "Come with me, Sarah," Elena said. I can't," Sarah stammered. "You can. And you will." Elena walked to the door. She stood at the top of the stairs, the wind whipping her hair. Below on the tarmac, the scene was not what Captain Sterling had expected. He was standing in front of a heavy-set police sergeant, gesturing back at the plane. "Yes, officer. She's in seat 5A. Belligerent refused orders. I want her removed immediately." The sergeant wasn't looking at Sterling. He was looking up at the top of the stairs, and behind the police, standing next to the black Mercedes, were 3 men in dark suits. One of them was David Chen, the chief of operations for AeroVantage. The other was the company's general counsel. Sterling followed their gaze. He looked up and saw Elena standing there in her hoodie. "Get her down here," Thorne shouted from the tarmac. "Cuff her." David Chen stepped forward, bypassing Sterling entirely. He walked to the bottom of the stairs and looked up at Elena. He didn't look angry. He looked terrified. He bowed his head slightly. "Good evening, Ms. Vance," Chen called out, his voice cutting through the wind. "Welcome to London. I apologize for the delay." Sterling froze. His brain stuttered. "Ms. Vance." He turned to Chen. You know this passenger. She's nobody. Her name is Smith." Chen turned slowly to look at Sterling. The look was one of absolute pity. "Captain Sterling," Chen said, his voice ice-cold. "This is Dr. Elena Vance. She is the founder of Vance Biometrics." Chen paused, letting the snow fall between them. "And as of 48 hours ago, she is the sole owner of AeroVantage. She is your employer, and she owns this plane." Sterling's knees actually buckled. He grabbed the railing of the stairs to steady himself. He looked up at the woman in the hoodie. The woman he had moved. The woman he had threatened. The woman he had blocked from the Wi-Fi. Elena walked down the stairs 1 step at a time. The sound of her sneakers on the metal was the only sound in the world. She reached the tarmac and stopped in front of Sterling. She didn't yell. She didn't scream. She simply adjusted her glasses. "Captain," she said softly, "I believe you have my police escort ready." The silence on the tarmac was heavier than the snow that was rapidly accumulating on the wings of the Global 7500. The wind howled, cutting through the thin fabrics of suits and uniforms. But Captain Richard Sterling didn't feel the cold. He felt a different kind of freeze, a numbness that started in his chest and radiated out to his fingertips. He looked at David Chen, a man he feared and respected, a man who controlled the roster and the paychecks. Chen wasn't looking at him. Chen was looking at the woman in the grey sweatpants, with the reverence one usually reserves for royalty or religious figures. Dr. Eleanor Vance. The name ricocheted around Sterling's skull. He knew the name. Everyone in aviation knew the name. She wasn't just a billionaire. She was an engineer, a pilot, a prodigy who had developed the navigational algorithms used in the very flight management system of the plane standing behind him, and he had told her to sit in the back. He had called her a security threat. He had grabbed her arm. Sterling's voice was a dry croak. He tried to unbutton his blazer, a nervous tick, but his fingers wouldn't work. "Mr. Chen, there must be a misunderstanding. The manifest, it said Smith. I was following protocol for an unrecognized passenger, interfering with a VIP." "Protocol?" Eleanor spoke for the first time since descending the stairs. Her voice was low, calm, and terrifyingly clear. She stepped closer to Sterling, forcing him to look her in the eye. "Captain, does AeroVantage protocol instruct you to physically grab a passenger? Does it instruct you to disconnect their communication devices intentionally? Does it instruct you to deny them the meal they paid for? To feed a man who is already intoxicated?" Sterling opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked to Julian Thorne for support, an instinctive reaction to seek help from the powerful male in the room. But Julian Thorne was busy self-destructing. Thorne, whose face was still pale from the turbulence and the alcohol, had finally processed what Chen had said. The hoodie woman was a billionaire. She was the billionaire. Thorne's survival instinct kicked in clumsily. He let out a nervous, braying laugh. "Well?" Thorne shouted, stepping forward and nearly slipping on a patch of ice. "This is a twist. A secret boss, I love it. You got us good, sweetheart." He extended a hand toward Elena, flashing his $1,000,000 sales smile. "Julian Thorne, I assume you know my firm. We manage assets for the Crown. Maybe we got off on the wrong foot. The stress of the markets, you know, Christmas Eve crunch." Elena looked at his hand as if it were a dead fish. She didn't move. "Mr. Thorne," Elena said, "you verbally abused my staff. You destroyed the upholstery of my aircraft, and you endangered the lives of everyone on board by standing up during a wind shear approach." "Oh, come on, don't be dramatic," Thorne scoffed, dropping his hand. "I pay $50,000 a flight. I can stand on my head if I want. I'm the customer. The customer is king." Elena turned her head slightly to the large police sergeant standing by the patrol car. "Sergeant Miller," Elena said, "is standing up during a critical flight phase a violation of the air navigation order?" Sergeant Miller, a burly man who had been waiting in the cold for 20 minutes and had zero patience for men in expensive suits, stepped forward. "Yes, ma'am, it is. Section 241, endangering the safety of an aircraft. It's a criminal offense." Thorne's smile vanished. "Now wait a minute. I'm a platinum member, and," Elena continued, "is intoxication on board an aircraft also an offense if it leads to disorderly conduct?" "It is, ma'am," Miller said, reaching for his belt. "Excellent," Elena said. "Then I would like to formally press charges. I have the cockpit voice recorder data and the witness testimony of the flight attendant to corroborate that Mr. Thorne was drunk abusive and refused crew instructions during landing." Thorne's eyes bulged. "You can't do this. Do you know who I am? I'm due at the Shard in an hour." "You're going to be late," Elena said simply. Sergeant Miller nodded to his constables. "Cuff him!" Thorne screamed as the officers grabbed his arms. "Sterling, tell them I was under your protection. You said I was the priority, Sterling." Sterling stood frozen, watching his VIP being manhandled onto the hood of a police cruiser. The man he had sold his integrity to impress was now being stuffed into the back of a police car, like a common criminal. As the police car drove away, lights flashing against the snowy tarmac, the silence returned. Now it was just the AeroVantage executives, Eleanor Sarah, who was shivering at the top of the stairs, and Captain Sterling. Eleanor turned back to Sterling. The captain was trembling now. "Dr. Vance," Sterling whispered. I didn't know. If I had known it was you." "That," Eleanor cut him off, "is exactly the problem, Richard." She used his first name. It wasn't friendly. It was final. "If you had known I was a billionaire, you would have treated me with respect," Eleanor said, the wind whipping her hair around her face. "But because you thought I was a nobody, because you saw a black woman in a hoodie reading a paperback, you treated me like garbage. You treated me like an obstacle." She took a step closer. "A true captain protects every soul on board, Richard. not just the ones with the platinum cards. You failed the most basic test of character. You judged, and because of that, you made the sky unsafe. Sterling looked down at his shoes. He was 55 years old. He had flown for 30 years. He realized with a sinking horror that he had just flown his last leg. David Chen stepped forward. He held out his hand. "Captain Sterling," Chen said, his voice void of emotion. "Hand over your company ID and your ramp access badge." "David, please," Sterling pleaded, his eyes filling with tears. "It's Christmas. I have a mortgage. I have 2 kids in university." "You should have thought about that before you grabbed the owner of the company," Chen said. "The badge. Now." With shaking hands, Sterling unclipped his ID from his blazer. He handed it to Chen. "You are suspended without pay, pending a formal inquiry tomorrow morning at 09:00 hours at HQ, Chen stated. "Do not enter the aircraft. Do not speak to the crew. Find your own way home." My flight bag is on the plane," Sterling stammered. "We will courier it to you," Chen said. "Goodbye, Mr. Sterling." Sterling stood there for a moment, a man stripped of his rank, his dignity, and his ride. He looked at the warm, glowing windows of the jet he had commanded an hour ago. Then he turned and began the long, humiliating walk across the snowy tarmac toward the public terminal, trudging through the slush in his expensive pilot shoes. Elena didn't watch him go. She looked up at the top of the stairs. "Sarah," she called out. Sarah poked her head out, looking terrified. "Yes, Miss Vance. Grab your coat and your bag," Elena said warmly. "You're not cleaning up that vomit. The ground crew will handle the biohazard. You're coming with me." "Coming with you, am I? Am I fired too?" Sarah asked, her voice breaking. "Fired?" Elena laughed softly. "Sarah, you're the only person on that plane who did their job today. You tried to protect me. You tried to feed me. You stood up to a drunk man. Get in the car. We're going to the Dorchester for Christmas dinner." Sarah's jaw dropped. She scrambled back inside, grabbed her bag, and ran down the stairs, slipping slightly on the ice before right-sizing herself. Eleanor opened the door to the black Mercedes, waiting on the tarmac. The heat from the car spilled out, inviting and luxurious. "After you," Elena said to Sarah. As the car pulled away, leaving the lonely figure of Richard Sterling shrinking in the rearview mirror, Elena pulled out her phone. She had one more call to make. She needed to make sure that when Sterling walked into that inquiry tomorrow, there was nowhere left for him to hide. Christmas morning in London is usually quiet. The streets are empty, the shops are shuttered, and the city sleeps under a blanket of festive peace. But inside the glass-walled boardroom of AeroVantage's European headquarters in Kensington, the atmosphere was anything but peaceful. It was sterile, cold, and tense. At the head of the long mahogany table sat Elena Vance. She had traded her hoodie for a sharp, tailored black blazer and a white silk blouse. She looked every inch the titan of industry she was. To her right sat David Chen. To her left sat the company's Director of Human Resources and the Chief Legal Counsel. At the far end of the table, sitting alone in a chair that seemed too small for him, was Richard Sterling. He looked 10 years older than he had the day before. His eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep. He was wearing a suit, but without the pilot's epaulets, he looked diminished. Just a man in a room full of people who held his fate in their hands. "This is a formal disciplinary hearing regarding the conduct of Captain Richard Sterling on Flight AV 750 December the 24th. The HR director began speaking into a recorder. Sterling cleared his throat. "I would like to start by apologizing. I was under extreme pressure. The weather, The holiday schedule, the demanding client. Elena held up a hand. Sterling stopped instantly. "Let's skip the excuses, Richard," Elena said calmly. She tapped a tablet in front of her. The large screen on the wall flickered to life. It displayed a timeline. "The ghost audit. You assume that yesterday was an isolated incident," Elena said. "You think you just had a bad day. But you see, I didn't just buy this airline on a whim. I'm a scientist. I deal in data. Before I signed the check, I ran a background analysis on every senior captain in the fleet." She swiped the tablet. A list of names appeared on the screen. Most were green. Sterling's was flashing red. "Over the last 6 months," Elena continued, "you have filed 12 complaints against passengers. All of them were regarding attitude or non-compliance. I cross-referenced those passengers." A series of photos appeared. They were diverse faces. Young men in streetwear, women with children, people of color. "Do you notice a pattern, Richard?" Elena asked. "You never file complaints against men in suits. You never file complaints against the Julian Thorns of the world. You only find security threats among people who don't look like your idea of the elite." Sterling shifted uncomfortably. "Safety is subjective. It's a judgment call." "Is it?" Elena pressed a button. Audio filled the room. It was crystal clear, taken from the cockpit voice recorder of the previous day's flight. Sterling's voice. "She knows her place. I just cut the dead weight from the network. Disconnected the non-essential devices in the rear." The recording cut off. The silence in the room was deafening. "That wasn't a safety judgment," Elena said, her voice hard as diamond. "That was malice. You deliberately sabotaged a passenger's amenities to curry favor with a man who was actively abusing your crew. You prioritized a tip over your integrity." David Chen leaned forward. "Richard, do you know what the biohazard cleaning fee was for the master suite?" Sterling shook his head. £12,000, Chen said. "We had to replace the carpet you let Mr. Thorne vomit on because you were too busy bullying Ms. Vance to manage the cabin." Sterling looked desperate. "I can change. I can take sensitivity training. I've flown for 30 years. I have a clean FAA record. Please don't take my wings." Elena looked at him. For a moment, she felt a pang of sympathy. It was tragedy in a way, a man so consumed by his own biases that he destroyed his own life. But then she remembered the hand on her arm. She remembered the sneer. "I'm not taking your wings, Richard," Elena said. "The FAA might do that after they review the report we filed this morning regarding your failure to enforce safety protocols during landing. But as for your employment here..." She stood up. The movement made Sterling flinch. "Aerovantage is rebranding," Elena announced. "We are moving away from the old boys club mentality. We are going to be the airline for the modern world. Excellence, not arrogance. Service, not servitude." She walked down the length of the table until she stood right next to him. "You don't fit that vision. You are terminated effective immediately for cause. You will receive no severance. You will receive no reference." Sterling slumped. It was over. "However," Elena added, softening her tone slightly, "I am not a monster. I have instructed HR to pay out your pension contributions in full, though we are not legally obligated to do so given the gross misconduct firing. Take the money, Richard. Go home to your family. And maybe, just maybe, spend some time thinking about why you see the world the way you do." Sterling stood up slowly. He looked at Elena, really looked at her for the first time. He saw the intelligence, the power, and the grace. He choked out. "I am sorry." He turned and walked out of the room. The door clicked shut. Elena let out a long breath and sat on the edge of the table. "He's gone," Chen said. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Elena said. "What about Thorn?" Chen smiled grimly. "That's the other bit of good news. The video of his arrest. Someone on the ground crew filmed it. It's trending on Twitter. Drunk billionaire. His firm suspended him this morning to protect their stock price. He's currently in a holding cell in Essex, waiting for a bail hearing." "Karma," Elena murmured. "It moves fast." "So," Chen asked, "what now?" "We have a pilot shortage with Sterling gone." Elena smiled. She looked out the window at the grey London sky. "Actually, I have an idea about that. Where is Sarah?" "She's in the staff lounge waiting for you." "Bring her in," Elena said, "and get the promotion paperwork ready." "Promotion?" Chen asked. "Sarah is a flight attendant. She's not a pilot." "No," Elena corrected. "But I checked her file too. Did you know Sarah has a commercial pilot's license? She's been trying to build her flight hours for 3 years, but Sterling kept blocking her transfer to the flight deck. He told her she didn't have the temperament for the cockpit." Chen's eyes widened. "I didn't know." "Well, now you do," Elena said, standing up and smoothing her blazer. "Let's go give someone the best Christmas present of their life." Elena walked toward the door, ready to rebuild her airline one person at a time. She had removed the rot. Now it was time to plant something new. The staff lounge at Aerovantage was a stark contrast to the luxury of the jets outside, fluorescent lights, vending machines, and a worn orange sofa where Sarah Jenkins sat, twisting a paper cup in her hands. She had been waiting 20 minutes. She was certain security was coming with a cardboard box for her things. The door opened. It wasn't security. It was Elena Vance, followed by David Chen. Elena sat next to Sarah, placing a thick file on the coffee table. "I'm sorry, Ms. Vance," Sarah blurted out. "I know I spoke out of turn on the plane. Please, I need this job. My mom is sick." "You didn't speak out of turn, Sarah," Elena said gently. "You spoke truth to power. That is a rare commodity." She tapped the file. "I was looking through the personnel archives. Sarah Jenkins, commercial pilot, license multi-engine rating 300 flight hours." Sarah froze. "I applied for the cadet program 3 times. "And you were rejected 3 times, Elena noted. "Captain Sterling wrote a note in your file. He claimed you lacked command presence. He said you were too soft for the flight deck." Sarah looked down, the old shame returning. "He told me I didn't have the aggression for it." "Sterling confused aggression with competence," Elena said firmly. "He blocked you because he was threatened by you." Elena reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "We have a vacancy in the Global 7500 fleet," David Chen added, smiling. "We need a first officer who knows the aircraft and treats people with dignity. We are sending you to Montreal for type rating training, full salary, and a signing bonus to cover your mother's bills." Eleanor pushed the box toward her. "Open it." Sarah's trembling fingers lifted the lid. Inside sat a pair of pilot epaulets, 3 gold stripes. "Take your seat, Sarah," Elena whispered. Christmas Eve returned to Teterboro, but the fear was gone. On the tarmac, a brand-new Gulfstream G700 gleamed under the floodlights, painted in the new midnight blue livery of Vance Aero. In the cockpit, First Officer Sarah Jenkins ran the pre-flight checklist. Her uniform was crisp, her gold stripes shining. She toggled the switches with the fluid grace of a professional who belonged. The cabin door opened, and Elena Vance stepped aboard carrying gifts. She poked her head into the cockpit. "Good evening, Ms. Vance," Sarah beamed. "Flight plan filed for Aspen. Smooth air ahead." "Smart flying," Elena smiled, handing Sarah a small box. "Merry Christmas." Inside was a silver keychain, engraved with a compass. "North is wherever you want to go." "Thank you, Elena," Sarah whispered. "Thank you for flying us." As the jet taxied out, Sarah pushed the throttles forward. The engines roared, a sound of pure freedom. The plane accelerated, leaving the slush and the memory of Richard Sterling far behind on the ground. "V1, rotate," Sarah called out. The nose lifted. The wheels left the earth. The aircraft soared upward, breaking through the clouds into the starlight, guided by a pilot who had finally found her wings. And that is the story of how a simple act of prejudice grounded a high-flying career, and how a moment of grace launched a new one. It's a powerful reminder that in life, just like in aviation, attitude determines altitude. Captain Sterling thought he was protecting the elite, but he forgot that the most important people in the room are often the ones you overlook. Karma didn't just hit Richard Sterling. It completely reshaped the airline, proving that when you lead with kindness, everyone rises. Now I have a question for you. If you were in Eleanor's shoes, would you have fired the captain on the spot? Or would you have given him a second chance? Let me know your verdict in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold at 40,000 feet, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story about the arrogant getting exactly what they deserve. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.